Indie artists, Spotify just dropped a stat that changes everything. And this is super, super good news. I can't wait to share it with you. Welcome to the climb! This is a show dedicated to helping singers, songwriters, and indie artists like you create leverage in the music business. Leverage is what you're going to need: cash flow, a thriving business, proof that your songs get cut, proof that you can sell tickets, that you can get streams, proof that you can record music and that you're a real artist. It's more important now than ever. If you remember the last episode where we talked about, one viral TikTok song does not an artist make, right? Mm-hmm. That's why we called it the climb. C.L.I.M.B, creating leverage in the music business. That came from the wicked brain of my my good friend and co-host, Mr. Brent Baxter. Brent's an award-winning hit songwriter with cuts by Alan Jackson, Randy Travis, Lady A, Joe Nichols, and more. Got a couple number ones in the last 24 months with Southern Gospel. It's actually really more like the last 14 months, isn't it? Because one was from one year, one from the next year. But
all I know is I got one in the top 30 right now, if it's still climbing by the time this drops. So happy about that.
There we go. I love that. And what I love about Brent is he helps songwriters like you turn pro by revealing how you write like a pro, do business like a pro. And when you're ready to go, the next step is relationships. And he helps you create relationships with the pros on the regular. You can find Brent very easily at songwritingpro.com. Once again, that's songwritingpro.com.
And I would like to introduce you to my co-host, Johnny Dwinell. Johnny owns Daredevil Production. They're breaking artists digitally by identifying new fans through data. Yeah, it's complicated, but yeah, Johnny's smart. If you're an artist looking to increase your streams, blow up your video views, sell more live show tickets, and get discovered by new fans, TV, and music industry pros, then Daredevil Production can help. Daredevil has worked with multi-platinum artists like Colin Ray, Tracy Lawrence, Ty Herndon, and Andy Griggs, just to name a few. You can find Johnny at daredevilproduction.com. That's production singular, no S, and there's no S because there is no other. Johnny D.
I'm fired up.
I know.
I'm super fired up.
I could tell. Our pre-chat was all kinds of passionate, fired up.
Yeah.
Intense.
Yeah.
I'm just going to get out of the way of this bus.
I can't wait to share this with you. No, we're going to dig into this, guys. This is really good news. It just keeps increasing your opportunities for success and the road, the paved path that's well lit to success is becoming wider and wider and wider and easier to attend. Okay. Mm-hmm. And easier to get on and easier to navigate. So we're going to get into that. But first, let's take care of a little business here. Join the C.L.I.M.B community on Facebook. Okay. It's facebook.com/groups/the C.L.I.M B community. You have to ask to be let in. We let everybody in. But you got to be good boys and girls. If you spam and like spray and pray, you're going to be bounced out so fast it's not even funny. And when it comes to that stuff, I go to the Facebook group to kick ass and chew bubble gum, and I'm all out of bubble gum. So
that's right. We're trying to protect your Facebook experience.
That's right. But that's not to say that we don't want to hear about it, because we do want to hear about it. If you have a modicum of self-awareness as an artist and you actually want to join this community to offer something, then you will know where you're supposed to go to put this. We want to hear about your gigs. We want to hear about your wins. We want to hear about all this stuff. Just put it in the right place, right? We got some wins today?
Oh, of course we do. So climber John McDonough, hopefully I'm saying your name right, John, says, "Hi, guys and gals. I usually never enter song contests, but at the last moment, I decided to enter a lyric I'd written some time ago and entered it into a lyrics-only category. Got an email last week that I'd been selected as a finalist by the International Songwriting Competition. I was surprised, but though it's no big deal, it is something for me to celebrate here. They gave me a link for votes as well. And as always, may we all keep on climbing. Thanks, Johnny and Brent, for all you do." And so that's cool. So he's getting
congratulations, John.
Attaboys on that. Yes, congrats, and keep on climbing, John. Bill O'Hanlon, guest and climber, got another sync song signed tonight, he said. So he said it's slated for the Young and the Restless. Well, there we go. Heard of that brand. So that's awesome. So congrats. And Randy England said, I lost my voice for 3 weeks, but still wrote a song just about every day, including one with Tracy Richardson, who's also a climber. I call her T
Nice.
Rich. That's her hip hop name for me.
T
T
Rich.
Rich.
I like that.
And so it's one he's going to play out now that he has his full range back. Is that a new height? I guess it's another lesson in perseverance. And yeah, Randy, that's a win. That's perseverance. That is climbing. That
Heck
is
yeah.
winning. So anyway, let's see. Johnny Matt Music said, I just got an email that the song I sent out for sync is in the considered list. I didn't even think it would be considered. So I love that, these big or small, we love them all, right? Because it's
That's right.
all steps on the climb. Any step up is a win.
Listen,
And that's
at
what matters.
bats are at bats. You can't get home runs without an at bat. Base
Right,
hits are
exactly.
base hits. You can't get home runs without at least a base hit. That's right. You can't put together a baseball team that has here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna put together this team, and all we're gonna do is have grand slams. That's all. That's all we're gonna do.
Because why
And
wouldn't you?
that's right. And by the way, not for nothing, can't have a grand slam without base hits. You need
You
to
gotta
have
load up the
3
bases first.
base hits to load up the bases to get the grand slam.
I didn't even think about that.
Not for nothing, mathematically impossible to have a grand slam without base hits.
You
So,
can't have a grand slam if all you hit is grand slams.
that's right.
That's funny. True.
So,
Yeah, so congrats on those wins, y'all. Keep on climbing.
congrats on those wins. Make sure you follow the podcast or subscribe to it, depending on wherever whatever platform you consume it on. Make sure that you leave a rating and review on iTunes and tell a friend about it. We got lots of good stuff here, guys. Lots of good news. Have you heard the good news? The C.L.I.M.B is helping artists and songwriters succeed. This podcast exists because we want you to win. Tell somebody about it, will you? For crying out loud. We love you, but tell somebody about it. So, all right.
So what do we got on tap today, Johnny?
Okay, this is awesome. So first of all, a little callback. We have to do a little callback to set this up, okay?
All right.
A while back, we did an episode on a Spotify article that came out that it came out in 2021, and it was talking about stats from 2020, and it said that actually it was a digital music news article, okay, and it said that at least 13,400 artists made at least $50,000 in streaming, just on Spotify, just on streaming in 2020, right? And the spin on digital music news, which I wasn't happy with. I thought it was kind of whiny and snowflakey and BSy, to be honest, and I don't mind saying that. But the spin was like, well, there's 8 million artists on Spotify, and only 13,400 of them making any money. That's 0.2%, and that's just ridiculous. As if it's Spotify's job to make sure that all artists who, I look at Spotify as like the world's refrigerator when it comes to songs, and everybody wants to put their little finger painting up on there. All the kids want their mom to say the finger painting, and some of them are really good, and some of them just are not, and some of them aren't serious,
Yeah. Oh, by the way, so I'm in the Climb community right now because you posted the link to this article there, so I click on it so I can see the article as well. And Patrick Adams is already in there and commented and said, "Reminds me of a podcast from a year or so ago."
That's right.
Look at that, Patrick on his.
I love it. He's doing the callback. Yeah.
Ooh, he
So
knows.
as soon as I saw this, I posted it right away with the sort of breakdown on everything. But I want to talk about it because not everybody's in the Climb community, so I want to make sure that everybody hears this. But yeah,
And
so
break it
this
down
former
for 'em.
article, not the one we're talking about today, but the former article is, you and I debunked that whole thing in the sense of the spin on it. Like, here's the information. The information is 13,400 artists made at least 50 grand on Spotify. And so I went and I thought, well, how many of those are like the biggies, right? Like who's got a record deal right now so that they're using somebody else's money and somebody else's infrastructure and promotional infrastructure to generate that kind of traffic. And then I went down the rabbit hole of, well, how many artists have there been, who that are superstars that are still, maybe they're not signed, maybe they're not alive, but they're still generating that kind of traffic to
Legacy
Spotify.
Superstars.
So that's like everybody that's ever been successful and had a record deal. And I went back 60 years And the
Mhm.
number we came up there, and if you want to see the breakdown, go listen to that episode. But the number that we came up there was like 2,700 artists in 60 years have made money. Okay.
Mhm.
And then I took out like another 1,000 for people who like the Richie Riches, whose parents will spend $4 million to so their kids can make 50 grand. And
Yeah.
and then the lucky lose, right? The lottery ticket winners who are like, I just did my first remix, or this I spit out some piece of whatever
Yeah.
on Pro Tools. Is the first time I've did it, and then they get in the right editorial playlist, and lo and behold, they're making boatloads of money. They're making 50 grand on Spotify with like zero promotion, zero effort. They just
Yeah.
got lucky. Okay. So those are really, really generous numbers. And I came up with around 8,400 artists, indie artists like you, that never had a label, never had a deal, that have somehow figured out that they don't need somebody's permission and they're making money. So right off the bat, instead of whining about it's only 2.2% of the 8 million artists, I'm like, that's 8,400 artists that probably never would have gotten a freaking deal, that are able to make some kind of money from their art that
Yeah.
you weren't before, because the only way you're going to do before is if you got on the radio, right?
Right.
So, and then I think that the hook on that, I think the hook on that whole show was, what club do you want to be a part of? The one where 8,400 indie artists made at least 50 grand on Spotify and streaming, which is close to 100 overall on
Mhm.
all the streaming, 100 grand? Or do you want to be part of the 2,700 artists in the last 60 years that made money? And that was only from 2020. That was 8,400 artists from the year 2020, 1 year.
Yeah.
Well, Spotify releases new data now, and what we're going to talk about today is music business worldwide. Um, and this is an interview with on a podcast, actually, with the CEO of music business worldwide, which is an industry rag that I get everything on it, right?
Yeah.
I listen to all this, and it was the founder of Music Business Worldwide. Guy's name is Tim Ingram, and Spotify releases these new statistics and about what artists earn on its platform. Okay, now 2 or 3 or 4 things can be true at the same time. Okay, does Spotify pay artists like crap and writers like crap? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, but
Yes.
are there way
Yes.
more artists that can
Yeah.
make real money on Spotify now than could if they were on the radio? That's
Yes.
also true. And this will change. Once again, this will change. Spotify is a middleman, and we've spoken about it ad nauseum on the podcast. The relationship that Spotify and all the streaming services have with the music business is unsustainable. It is a transitory type of thing, a stepping stone, because
Mhm.
it's a middleman that doesn't need to exist. And already in 2022, Spotify has been predicted to kind of start falling apart via the disruption of blockchain. Okay. And
Mhm.
that prediction came out at the end of last year, at the end of 2021. And when you realize that Snoop Dogg just bought Death Row Records, then proclaimed it was going to be an NFT only label, which is blockchain. And then mysteriously 2 weeks ago, his debut release, Dog Style, and Dr. Dre's Biggie, The Chronic, have now disappeared from streaming services, both on Death Row Records. Right? Maybe that's
Yeah.
gonna. Maybe that. Whoever made that prediction, there was 2 European banks, that investment banks, that made that prediction on Spotify last
Hmm.
year. I feel like if it doesn't happen in 2022, it'll be 2023. It's right around the corner.
Yeah.
Okay, so all that aside, let's just talk about the middle class of artists here. Okay, so here's the stats that I want to unpack. That's just so freaking exciting. First of all, Spotify says that in 2021, so this is the next year,
Mhm.
16,500 artists generated over $50,000 in royalties from Spotify.
All right. 16,500.
Yeah, that's up from 13,400 the year before.
Mm.
I already did the math on that. Want to know what it is?
Yes.
23% increase.
Wow.
And if you remember from the last show when we talked about the 13,400, that was a 19% increase from the year before, from the
Mm,
year before that, from 2019. So
nice.
not only is it increasing, it's actually
The
it's
rate of
actually
increase is
the
increasing.
rate of increase is increasing. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So, and let's also keep in mind, we're talking about 50 grand just on streaming royalties, just on Spotify.
Right.
Okay. That means that with Apple being a close second and Amazon, it's at least a reality of like 75 grand, but it's probably really closer to like 100 grand,
Yeah.
right? So all the other streaming services combined, you're making, you're doubling that money. You know, Spotify
Mhm.
has the lion's share of the streaming business, but there's some other biggies out there, Apple and Amazon being the next two big ones.
Yeah, and some that pay
So,
a lot better as well,
yeah.
so there's that to consider as well, yeah.
So, do you think, Brent, that that's a 23% increase in streams? Do you think that we signed 23% more major label artists in 2020, in
I'm thinking, heck
2021?
no. No,
No.
sir.
Nope. No, sir. That's
Right.
not the case. So, where did this growth come from?
Well, it can only come from indies. If they're not major, people aren't signing them. Then
That's
there we
right.
go, and if they didn't just add 23% more like legacy artists, like they found, a crates full of new Beatles recordings that hadn't been out before and added them, then it's gotta be current new indie people.
Yeah, that's right. So to me, right off the bat, that just, I think the big gist of that initial article about the 2020 data, or our initial episode about the 2020 data, excuse me, was the middle class is here,
Yeah.
right? More and more. I mean, if generating $100,000 as a business, that's a real business.
Yes. Mhm.
Okay, it's a small business. Is that artist taking home 100 grand? No,
No.
but that's cash flow, people.
Yep.
That's cash flow. That's traffic. That is, I mean, yeah. When you think about, let's look at the reverse of this, right? When you think about I mean, how many streams do you have to get 50 grand from Spotify?
Oh, let's
Like,
see.
that's a lot of freaking traffic, man.
Yeah.
So the second that,
I'm assuming that Spotify is, well, I don't know what the artist rate is. Never mind. I was gonna do the writer rate, but that's different than the artist rate. It's a lot lower.
right,
The writer
and
rate
let's
is.
keep in mind too that the artists who are smart, the indie artists who are smart and understand that they're also the label, then we'll take the label share of
Label
that.
share, artist share, possibly writer share as well.
Yeah.
So,
So there's a lot more there, right? I think we're
mhm,
getting better at it. We're certainly getting better at it. But this isn't even the most exciting piece of information, actually, to me.
okay.
So, well, actually, it's very exciting. It's right up there.
I'm gonna
They're
say it's
both
pretty darn
exciting.
exciting. So if you got something better in your holster, I can't wait to hear it.
No, I don't know if it's better actually. Now that I think about it, but it's revealing though. It's revealing, and I think it kind of puts egg in the face of digital music news for trying to put a spin on something that, which
Kind
I
of
mean,
food
you
for
and
thought.
I smelled it right away, Brent,
Yeah.
and just said, "No, come on, this is a crappy way to look at this." You know what I mean? Like, and I mean, my whole argument was we can't just assume that everybody who puts something up on Spotify deserves to be paid for it, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Deserves traffic, right?
Yeah. It's like
Like,
lamenting that only, a certain percentage of Pee Wee football players ever make it to the NFL.
yeah,
Well, like they are entitled to that.
exactly. Yeah, like there's some like Spotify's whole thing was like Spotify came out of the woodwork in 2009 and said we're going to create this streaming service and guarantee every artist that wants to upload their music an outcome.
The outcome is that your music is on Spotify.
That's the outcome.
That's
Yeah.
the outcome.
Not that anybody's going to give a crap about it, right?
Exactly.
Or not that
Distribution
anybody's
is
going
not
to hear
marketing.
it.
Yeah.
I
As a wise
mean,
man who co-hosts a podcast I listen to and co-host regularly said, distribution is not marketing.
mhm,
He runs Daredevil Production.
that's right.
Yes.
So check this out. At the bottom of this report here, Spotify estimates that Spotify goes to dig in on how many of the artists on our platform are actually professional artists
Mm-hmm.
or professionally aspiring artists, right? Like on their way,
Like treating it like a business. Like
treating
this
it like
is
a
my
business,
gig. Yeah.
trying to be professional, right?
Yep.
Um,
So what metrics do
and
they use to decide that? Is that what you're digging into?
what's that? Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
how do they figure that out?
The criteria they use to decide that. So what constitutes in with the criteria that Spotify uses? What constitutes a professional artist figure, right? Like
Mhm.
what is that? So there's essentially two key questions. The first, how many of the 8 million artists on Spotify's platform have released fewer than 10 tracks to date?
Mm,
That
okay.
number is going to blow your mind.
All right. What do we got?
5.4 million.
Woo!
So over two-thirds of all the artists on the service have released fewer than 10 tracks. In other words, haven't released enough tracks to fill an album.
Yep. So it leaves 2.6 million that
Right.
have. All
Now,
right.
out of those 2.6 million that have released more than 10 tracks,
Mhm.
uh, how many are popular enough to also have 10,000 monthly listeners?
Okay.
Now, monthly listeners go up and go down with every release. Every artist that has um, Spotify for Artists sees that,
Okay.
right? Like it shrinks. Like so, when you're on playlists, your monthly listeners go up, right?
Mhm.
When your tenure on when the singles or the releases tenure on that playlist goes away, the monthly listeners will go down unless you have another one
Mhm.
that's up there. Okay. You want to know how many artists have released more than 10 tracks who also have more than 10,000 monthly listeners on Spotify out of the 8 million?
I'm curious.
165,000.
Woo! That's a big drop.
That's a big job. Now, then Spotify said, you know what? They estimated that 199,000 artists sold a ticket to a live concert in 2019, so pre-pandemic, and they got that data from Songkick, Ticketmaster, and other digital platforms, right?
Mhm.
So Spotify, that's how Spotify gets the estimate of 200,000 artists on that service. Okay.
Okay.
And so Ingram says, to put it a slightly crueler way, 98% of the 8 million artists on Spotify today either aren't popular enough to have 10,000 monthly listeners or have released 10,000 tracks, less than 10 tracks to date, excuse me.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to say that one more time because I made a mess of it. But 98% of the 8 million artists on Spotify today either aren't popular enough to have 10,000 monthly listeners or have released less than 10 tracks to date. So Spotify's own stats show that, once again, here's that statistic, 0.2% of the 8 million artists on its platform are generating revenue of 50,000 or above. And that sounds horrible. But now, when you look at the reality of who's trying,
Mhm.
right? Who really is trying to be an artist? Who are the real artists? And this, by the way, this ties in with my last episode on the TikTok stars,
Mhm.
right? Who all of a sudden get all this traffic from one song, enough that they get a deal going, but they're not artists.
Yeah.
They're not ready to be artists. Let's put
Right.
it that. Maybe they're
They
not ready.
may
They
just be
just got a
baby
lot of
artists
attention.
incubating. Yeah.
Yeah. But out of the 200,000, if you look at 16,500 of the 200,000 who are really in it to win it,
Mhm.
that's over 8%.
Yeah. 8.25%, 8 and a quarter.
Yeah. That's over 8%, Guys, like this is this is astounding in so many ways. This is exciting for Daredevil
Mm-hmm.
because that means that the pie that I'm trying to get a slice of continues to grow,
Yeah.
and it's growing really fast.
Mm-hmm.
This is exciting for songwriters
Yeah.
for the same reason.
Well, I mean, I look at it and just because I was curious, went to that show the other night and it was all, TikToker after TikToker with millions of streams versus after millions of streams. I was like, what does that pay out? Because I get my statements and I see, and so I'm
Yeah.
just figure Spotify and I'm figuring 0.007 a spin. And I'm like, okay, that's like $7,000 for a million spins, like for the writer side. So if you're the solo writer, million spins on Spotify alone. Now I get stuff that comes in from all different streaming services. Like, okay, that's 7,000. If I own my publishing, it's a 50-50 co-write. That's $3,500. Not bad for a day's work.
Right.
If you look at it that way, wrote a song, it gets released by somebody. So the more people that are doing millions of streams, the better for me. Cause songwriting has always been about hits and stacking pennies.
Yes. Well, so let's just talk about that as it is right now,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'm just going to remind everybody that we have to factor in the free market here.
Yes.
Okay, which is why I am able to say with all confidence that the relationship that Spotify has with the music industry is unsustainable.
Yes.
It can't stay there. It just won't happen because they're not needed.
Yeah.
Um, they're just not needed. They were initially needed to prove to everybody that this streaming mumbo jumbo stuff can make money.
Yes.
But now you have the labels making billions every quarter,
Mm-hmm.
every 90 days on streaming. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And here's where the greed part comes in. It's like, wait a second. We own Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift, nobody's going to Spotify for Spotify. They're going for Taylor Swift.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever we're splitting with Spotify, if it's $1, it's too much.
Well, that and how many of these labels have publishing companies as well? And they're like, oh, the label side is doing well. The artist is getting paid, but our writers are getting hosed. Why
Yeah.
don't we
Yeah.
open up that cash register more and get our writers paid more because that gets us paid more?
Well, I tell you what,
There's that too.
that's that we skipped a step. I want to go back to the first step. Let's just
All
talk
right.
about where it is right now.
Yep.
Okay. Just where it is right now. You went from, I don't know what the number would be. What if you factor out 19%? Let's see. But I'm guessing it was probably somewhere around 10 or 11,000 artists that made at least 50 grand on Spotify in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
Then that number jumps to 13,400 artists in
Mm-hmm.
2020. And now it jumps to 16,500 artists in 2021. Okay. So um, that is, if we factor in calling back to that episode about the original Spotify data, that only 2,700 artists made any money in the
Mm-hmm.
last 60 years. Okay. But those artists made a boatload of money,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But then, I mean, we've had at least, well, 13,400, 14,400, 15,000. That's 3,100 more artists that
Mm.
generated at least 50 grand in revenue from Spotify in 1 year's time.
Yeah.
And that number's up that's something like 5,000 more artists that are actually generating revenue, period,
Yeah.
revenue, right? So you've got more artists figuring it out. Well, first of all, supply and demand. Well, we got more artists that need songs, don't we?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We've got more outlets for songwriters to make revenue. Now, maybe instead of having like your one big hit that generates $500,000 worth of revenue, God bless you if you have that, or $1 million
Yeah.
worth of revenue, God bless you if you have that. But maybe you can take your, I think of the troika, right? The triple threat of O'Hanlon and DeMarco and
And
LeBlanc,
LeBlanc. Yeah.
right? They got 1,000 songs they wrote between the three of them over there. Well, all those songs now all of a sudden they can all become money makers, but maybe you're going to have 20 songs that are out there making $7,000 each.
Yeah.
Why? Because we got a lot more artists that need that, your market is expanding too, songwriters.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay. So right now your market is just expanded 24% or 23% from the year before
Mhm.
and 19% from the year before that. I don't know. Like, I don't know what that, I have to back the math out on that, but
Mhm.
that's a massive increase
Yeah.
in the size of the market, the amount of people who are generating revenue.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what's happening right now with the way that Spotify crappily pays for their streams.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
So
really bad.
it's becoming less of a closed club, and it's going to be more of a, you know what, and you know what we still haven't done yet, and this is where Daredevil is heading this up, is we don't have a solid, dependable's the best word, repeatable, dependable pipeline for breaking artists digitally.
Yeah.
Radio was a solid, repeatable, dependable pipeline for 80 years
Mhm.
to break artists until it stopped.
Yeah.
And now everybody's going to kick that dead horse until they till they're honest with themselves and say, okay, this horse is dead and we've got to do something different.
Mhm.
Okay. But I'm not the only one out there trying to figure this out, trying to get artists to play in a sandbox with me. We're going to figure this out. Like, here's the steps that we need to take to brand an artist and get them market penetration on a
Mhm.
digital platform, right? It can happen. It's just nobody's doing it like that because they
Right,
want to
yeah.
pretend it's radio, or they get to pretend it's radio because our big multi-million dollar brand name broke on broadcast.
Mhm.
So anything we put out feels, digital is a broadcast device for us,
Yeah.
because I don't have to build it on digital. It's
Mhm.
already built, right? The audience is already there.
Yeah.
So this is like the potential in this is astoundingly huge. And I think there was I don't think I know, there was a episode too where we talked about how the music in the same year that the music industry shrank, like the worst year of the music industry, when we shrank or it wasn't a year, it was like an amount of time, it was a few years. We shrank from a $75 billion a year industry to a $15 billion a year industry. That was
Mm.
rock bottom. That's an 80% contraction in commerce pre-pandemic. Okay.
Yeah.
And in that same amount of time that the music industry shrank, video gaming exploded to $150 billion a
Mhm.
year industry.
Wow.
So to me, 75 billion, I think you could make an argument, a big picture argument. Now I'm up at 30,000 feet, guys, that 75 billion was the saturation level. That was as much as you can make in the music industry because of the mathematical restriction of radio.
Yeah.
The only way that you could make more money is to either charge more money for the music
Mhm.
or somehow figure out how to get more artists market saturation.
Yeah. Through that same bottleneck of radio, which
But it's a bottleneck, yeah.
yeah.
Only 12 songs an hour, right? They're only
Yeah.
spinning 25 to 45 or 40 songs a week.
And I can
That's
only
it,
listen to
and
one
they're doing
radio
it for
station at
months
a
and months and
time.
months and months and months,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
I
and I
wonder
can
how
only
many
listen to one radio station at a time, you know?
Yeah, I wonder what the number is for your average station, how many different songs they spin over the course of a year.
Yeah.
I'll bet you that's frightening.
Probably is, yeah.
I'll bet you that's absolutely frightening to how small that number is.
Yeah.
Because if you think about they're playing, I mean, they're spinning, 25 to 35 or 40 songs a week, but each of those singles is gonna be probably on that playlist for at least 3 or 4 months, probably averaging 6 months.
Mhm.
Then, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, how many songs is it, dude? It's not a lot. It's
Not a
not a lot
lot.
of songs over the course of a year. But here we have a decentralized platform. They don't need to get on radio to get to the audience. And more artists are figuring out how to generate money doing that. I think we can come back and easily hit 150 billion as an industry with a very, very, very strong middle class happening
Mhm.
because, if you can listen, if you can figure out how to have 10,000 monthly listeners on Spotify and continue to promote and generate cash flow of total cash flow of all the streaming services of 100 grand, that doesn't include concert tickets, that doesn't include merch, that doesn't include anything in the blockchain or whatever. Like then this is that's a business, man. That's a
Yeah.
viable business. Now all of a sudden it was just such a close club before. Everybody's like, you got to have your plan B.
Mhm.
Got to have your plan B because very few people make it. Very few people make it because there was like three different sets of gods
Yeah.
in the industry that got to decide,
Yeah. The gatekeepers. Yeah.
the gatekeepers,
And keep
and
in
they all
mind,
had to say yes.
yeah, and keep in mind that this is just Spotify. This is
Mhm.
one lane. This is not live. This is not merch. This is not
Right.
any of the other stuff, right? So you may be like, well, how can I feed a
This is
family
not
on
traffic
50?
that you generate from YouTube or
Yeah.
from other like, yeah,
It's
TikTok.
yeah,
Yeah.
so that, 50 grand revenue is just one source, and you wanna
Yep.
diversify that portfolio.
Yep. That's
So,
right.
yeah.
That's right. Now,
So
that's just
how many artists are making 50 grand, like, all in with merch and shows and all that stuff? That's a gotta be a way bigger number
that's a way bigger number.
because 'cause they're making
Yeah.
10 on Spotify, but they're making 10 on merch, they're making 10 on, whatever.
Mhm. Yeah. And all these artists, I can tell you for the most part are still, I don't mean this to sound harsh, but like kind of clueless about the digital platform. They're
Yeah.
just figuring out how to get their head around honoring the digital platform. When they
Mhm.
figure that out, when the labels figure out a solid, dependable pipeline for
Mhm.
breaking artists digitally to cut through that noise, okay, then let me tell you something, man. It shoots up, right? Just
Yeah.
enough people need to be able to see it enough times.
Mhm.
That's the basic of it, and we're all still lamenting that radio doesn't work anymore. But
Right, yeah.
that's just where it is right now. So where it is right now, more and more songwriters can make money because more and more artists need songs and they are making money.
Mhm.
And so therefore, you can have a lot of really little, like, minor league base hits
Mhm.
that stack up to hey, that's all of a sudden I'm making money on the side here that's like some mailbox money
Yeah.
that's legit, right? Instead of
Yeah.
one song, I've got 40 out there that are
Mhm.
generating revenue for me. I mean, between Lucy and O'Hanlon and DeMarco, what do they have, like 10 songs that they had synced? This is
I don't remember, and that's was just in the past year. So several that are out there, and
Yeah, just in the past year, 10 songs. So this is not so if you're looking at this through the lens of what it used to the numbers, right, of and the scarcity of a cut
mhm,
from 15 years ago from the old music business, this doesn't make sense. It seems like pie in the sky.
yeah,
But here we just had these people on the podcast a while ago, and they're like, "Yeah, so far we got 10 songs this year synced."
yeah.
That's
All
that's generating revenue. Is it generating millions? No, but they've got 1,000 songs that can make money for them.
yeah. What did Bill call it? He's like, it's playing like the it's not the $1 million lottery, but it's more like the scratch offs that are like
Yeah.
$10 here, $20 here. Obviously the sync stuff pays more than that, but he's saying it's a smaller stuff, but it's better odds.
Better odds,
And,
way better odds, and
yeah.
you can get more of it placed, and this is the other thing is that there's just more lanes to put it in, right? We need
Mhm.
more songs. Now, this we've already seen, we talked about Snoop Dogg bought Death
Death
Row
row.
Records,
Mhm.
said it's gonna be an NFT only label, AKA blockchain only label, and then pulls The Chronic and pulls Dog Style from streaming. Um, I don't care what the outcome of this story is. We're
Mhm.
either going to be we're either going to find out how to make a light bulb,
Mhm.
or we're gonna find out how
One
not to
way
make a light
one
bulb.
way not to, right, yeah.
Okay, but that takes balls,
Mhm.
and And we have streaming services already on blockchain. Audius is Audius. That's a blockchain streaming service. Theta is essentially the YouTube of blockchain.
Mhm.
Okay, so for the artists who have traffic, again, I'm supporting my statement that streaming services like Spotify have an unsustainable relationship with the music industry, because as soon as the artists and the labels figure out they can make more money
Mhm.
with the same traffic over here, that's where they're going to go, because the traffic will follow them,
Yeah.
because the distribution doesn't matter on digital.
Mhm.
And so when that starts to happen, I don't know exactly how it's gonna manifest itself, but we're gonna see a lot happen in the next 9 months. By the time Christmas of 2022 comes around, we're gonna see a lot of stuff go on there, and I promise you by this time next year, we're gonna have much more clarity on this. That's a very short amount of time, and, without the middle, and keep in mind, not only are you talking about eliminating the middleman, right? We're not
Mhm.
we're 'Cause Brent, you and I were talking about this before we pressed record here. It should make sense that a streaming service comes out and says, "Hey, we charge this amount of money for the monthly subscription to the streaming service, and we generate this amount of money from ads. And so all the revenue that's created, we are going to put into this big pot, and then we're
Mhm.
going to take all the streams that have happened,
Mhm.
and we're going to divide that amount of money by the amount of streams, and that's going to give each stream a dollar amount."
You're right.
And that's where you start. Now, you and I were talking about, okay, so who curates the playlist? Who's going to be doing, there's going to be some infrastructure costs in there
Mhm.
that should come out. But
Right.
because it's going to be completely transparent, and because nobody is going to be able to change that rule without getting 51% of the community to agree to it.
Mhm.
Can you imagine about like ASCAP if they came and said, "Hey, we're just gonna change this rule about sync, and your vocal bumpers are, even though the network's paying us as primary vocals, we're not going to pay you as a primary vocal because it's just
Right.
more fair for the other artists," and blah 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 blah. Well, I mean, that crap doesn't fly when you got to
Yeah.
get 51% of the people that are generating the revenue to say yes.
Yeah.
So how does that work, right? So you guys, this is when artists need to be focusing on traffic. Songwriters, go back and listen to that episode with DeMarco LeBlanc and O'Hanlon.
Mhm.
Like, you need to be stacking up your songs, man, because
Yeah.
it's all going to be able to generate revenue. And I promise you, without a doubt, that you are going to make significantly more money per stream, right?
Mhm.
If it goes to point zero instead of 0.007 cents per stream, if it goes to 0.07 cents per stream, that's 10 times more money per stream,
Oh, heck yeah. And
right?
yeah, and then
And
that, 7,000, for 1,000,000 streams on Spotify becomes 70,000 for 1,000,000 streams on, like, Audius or one of these other
say
blockchain
that
things.
one more time.
Yeah, so that's 7,000 per for a writer, 7,000 for 1,000,000 streams on Spotify becomes 70,000, which is getting up there like selling a platinum record back in the 90s, because that would
Yeah,
have generated about $90,000, for the writers and publishers on a
yeah,
1,000,000 units sold, depending on what the statutory
for
rate
just a
was at the
cut,
time.
for a
For just
cut,
an
not a
album cut,
single.
that is only selling records, that's no airplay. So this is like a,
Yeah.
hidden track or whatever, B-side, non-single album cut on.
We're right around the corner
Yeah.
from this, guys. We're right around the corner from this. So this is where, and because, listen, because the distribution doesn't matter, you may think Spotify feels like another big Goliath that's just going to step on you.
Mhm.
But that's not the case. Spotify is weaker than you think.
Yeah.
They don't go spending billions on podcasts because they feel like they love podcasts. They're doing it because they see the future of music,
They
and
see
they know
what
they
Netflix did, and where everybody started pulling their stuff off Netflix, so Netflix has definitely invested robustly in making their own movies.
right. And And here's where we have to we have to caution you to understand the chess games are they're very, very similar industries in that they create artistic intellectual property and promote that artistic intellectual property, and Netflix adapted first, like Spotify adapted first and created streaming, but they're different products. It still costs millions of dollars to make a TV show or a movie.
Hmm.
So it's very, very there's scarcity there. It's very limited to how many people get to put their
Yeah.
finger painting up on the refrigerator. There's 70,000 uploads a day on Spotify. So
Right.
Spotify can't create its own content in the music business enough to replace the revenue that they're gonna lose when this shift happens.
Hmm.
And if the labels are smart, they'll follow what Hollywood did, because right now all the streaming services, the music is commoditized,
Hmm.
meaning that I can subscribe to Apple, or I can subscribe to Amazon, or I can subscribe to Spotify. I have exactly the same products
Yeah.
available, exactly the same. And therefore, the only way to compete in a commoditized market is with price.
Hmm.
That's bad for the music industry.
Right.
But if you notice in Hollywood, if you've got kids, you've got Disney,
Hmm.
you subscribe.
Yeah, because
If
that's the
you
only
like
place you're watching
Friends,
Encanto.
there you go. And
Unless
if you
you
got
but
Friends, you're on NBC. So they each of those subscription services have different products,
mhm.
and
Scarcity.
you're gonna go, you're gonna go accordingly, right? And
Mhm.
they'll figure out how, just the same way your cable provider packages up different things and different features to make some sort of conglomerate platform, that'll happen. But the other big piece of this, guys, that from a business standpoint, when we get to Web 3.0, which is happening so fast, so much faster than you think, is that there's no waiting.
Mhm.
It happens immediately. Daily cash flow into your digital
Mm.
wallet.
That won't hurt my
That
feelings.
is cash flow is king. There are businesses like Janelle's son runs a oil, like he's in the oil business in North
Mhm.
Dakota, and he has this whole service that works around wells and stuff like that, in the oil business, right?
Mhm.
Well, how do you think Exxon and Shell and BP, how these big oil companies, how do you think they pay?
As slowly as possible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're talking like net 90,
Ugh.
right? So you go and take on a job,
Mhm.
and it's like, could be the hugest contract in the world.
Yeah.
You're very excited about it. How the hell are you gonna pay for it?
Yeah.
Because you gotta front the cost for the first 90 days
Mhm.
until, think about that, right?
Yeah.
And so songwriters, same thing. Brent, you had a huge hit with Alan Jackson's,
Mhm. Monday morning church,
Monday
yeah.
Morning Church. When did that song drop, and when did you get paid?
Let's see, it dropped, October of 2004. It was released as a single, and that's about the time the record came out too. It was like the 2nd single, I think, off that record. And let's see, so it started generating in October, as far as probably both mechanicals and sync, if they're both dropped in that quarter, that 4th quarter of 2004. And then the earliest I got paid was on, let's see, man, it was months. It was definitely into 2005, because it
Like
would have
summer of
at the
'05?
at the end of 4th quarter of '04 would have gotten paid out to, say, both, ASCAP, or, the label would have paid out probably 45 days after the end of the quarter. So we're talking mid 1st quarter 2005, that we got paid to Blue Water, who was handling my, admin, and then ASCAP. And then they would have paid out to me middle of the next quarter, probably. So we're talking middle of the next 2nd quarter have been about May 15th, that I would
Yeah,
have started seeing income from a single that dropped in October, started getting significant airplay in October. So like half a year.
yeah, and that sounds actually pretty fast to me. That sounds pretty efficient. I would have bet it would have
It
been
might
more
have
around
taken
9 months.
longer, but it's been a minute. But yeah, because if it's starting to generate, starting to get scanned, they would have reported that and paid on it 45 days after that quarter, after the end of that current quarter. Yeah. Something like
There
that.
you go.
I'll have to look.
So,
I should look at my,
so guys, can you
podcast.
imagine like being able to put something out and then immediately start generating revenue from the traffic that it has and that immediacy of the money? So a lot of things happen. Number one, like wherever there's a big pool of money, okay, and it's going to stay there for a while, is where you're going to find problems, right?
Mhm.
That's where you're going to find corruption. Right? Who's that famous bank robber? I can't remember. Was it Willie something? And they said, you know, why do you rob banks? He was a big, famous sort of personality back in the
Yeah.
30s, the 20s and 30s, because he would always rob banks and he would just spend all the money and he was hanging with the movers and the shakers and the beautiful people. He's like a robber celebrity.
Yeah.
But why would you always rob banks? He's like, because that's where the money is, you know?
Right.
And
Yeah.
so it's the same is true for your governments as it
Mhm.
is for PROs, as it is for Spotify, as it is for charities. I mean, you get, you know, a whole millions and millions and millions of dollars just sitting right here. Somebody's going to come up with an idea how to tap into that
Yeah.
before it gets to you.
Yeah.
Do you see? And now that doesn't happen. It's just immediately goes to you, which is going to, when that hits, you want to see how fast this grows.
Mhm.
Because this becomes a viable vocation now.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought about that? Like, you know, or you could go into music. There's lots of people that do that, and they can go make money within a couple of years as long as you can, as long as you're artistically ready to do that.
Yeah.
There's money to be made, and for Daredevil, that means there's artists that need help,
Heck
right?
yeah.
There's more artists that need marketing. For songwriters, there's more artists that need songs. So, guys, this is huge, huge, huge news. The fact that it went up from a 19% increase to a 23% increase. The fact that I think listeners of this podcast, I don't think you're one of those 5.4 million, you know, artists, I put that in air quotes,
Yeah.
who have less than 10 tracks on, you know, on Spotify. I don't think you listen to this podcast if you're that kind of artist. I doubt
Yeah.
it. Unless you're really at the beginning of a journey that you're serious about.
Mhm.
But, you know, when we separate the wheat from the chaff, it becomes a very, very small number of people who are actually really doing it.
Mhm.
And then the percentage of those people that are making that kind of money is 8%. That's a lot, man. That's a lot.
Yeah.
And I think that grows again too. So just more good news, just more reasons to, you know, to know that this is actually this isn't a pipe dream, and I think it's less and less luck
Yeah.
is required now because of
Mhm.
the gatekeepers are gone, and it's more and more, you know, I mean, how much is there luck involved with becoming like a master craftsman plumber? I guess yes, if you're, you know, if you get lucky and you get this apprenticeship with this guy who's like the plumbing god
Yeah.
of the plumbing world, or like he's the guy or whatever, or you learn from just some, you know, random plumber who just happens to be a brilliant businessman as well as
Yeah.
a plumber, and here's how you run a business,
Mhm.
which is different than our talent of plumbing.
Right.
And but there's some luck involved with that because the teacher appears. But if you go and you get schooled and you become an apprentice and you work your ass off, you're going to make money as a plumber,
Yeah.
right? Or a ditch digger or a construction or whatever. And so I feel like we're headed towards that where it's less luck and more how bad do you want it?
Yeah.
You know,
It's
so
there for the
there you go,
taking.
guys. That's all I got to say about that. Hey, start reframing your brain on the way that you think about this. Your brain is corrupt with broadcast ideas. Clean that out. Go to giftfromjohnny.com, JOHNNY, free download called Whoever Owns the Traffic Rules the Road, which is largely about what we talked about here today and can generate real revenue. And it's a free download. Just go there, tell us where to send it, we'll get it to you. This podcast exists because we want you to win, so keep on climbing.
And we'll see you at the top.
Who